I'm sure all of you have played board games before. There's very few people who haven't. So, before I start giving my full presentation, I want to pass out a little bit of a demonstration, a few cards that I've made, just so you can take a look at it and sort of understand what I'm talking about throughout the presentation. I'm going to come down, just take a couple, pass them down, just so you get the gist of it. There you go. So, this is my driving question. How can I use my creativity and writing skills to connect with and entertain an audience? This is Wonder Chess. Down there, that's me, I'm Jack Arnold. Hi. Yes, so my main talent is writing. That's my big thing. I'm a writer, I enjoy writing, I love creating characters and situations and locations. And it's just something that I really love doing and something that I hope to do for the rest of my life. And I've got a bunch of other little minor talents listed down here. Most of that doesn't really matter. But the point is, a lot of it is influenced by my writing. Dungeons and Dragons, speech and debate, video game development. I have to write for almost all of that. So it's something that influences almost every aspect of my life. And while I don't like to brag, I am a published short story author. It's called The Window. It's on Blue Marble Review. It's a very nice story, if I say so myself. But, you know, just it's an extra thing. My professional consultant was Miss Christy Satterley. She was a member of the Board Game Geek since before I was born, which is rather impressive because I am 17. So she provided me with a lot of board game testing experience and a lot of help with my game, which I will hop into now. So, the summary. The very first thing I did was I wrote a short story. The short story was called The Locked Door. And when I wrote it, I intended it to be standalone. I didn't really want it to be anything that went for a really long time because I have a tendency of turning projects into much longer projects. I didn't want it to be one of those. But it did turn out like that. I submitted the short story to a competition and it won 3rd place and got published on their website. Unfortunately, the site was taken down, so I don't have anything to show for that. I do have this email from the publisher, but that's about it, so rather unfortunate. But nonetheless, I expanded it into a full story called Simply Wondrous that is based on Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. And everything in it is influenced by the story or contains its characters in some way, shape, or form. And then I realized that it looks a lot like a board game, the story itself. And I thought it might be a good idea to turn it into one, which is exactly what I did, which ended up with the cards that you have in front of you. The game itself is called Wonder Chess, and it would take really long to explain on one slide, or 2, or 3, but I'm going to try and summarize. Essentially, it is a 4-player chess game where you start the game with only your king and your queen on the board. As you progress through the game, you gain more pieces, each one of whom is a different Alice in Wonderland character, and each one that has a different ability that helps you manipulate the board and other players to help you win the game. My timeline? So, the very first thing I did was, of course, write the short story. That was in August of 2022, and then September I began work on the very first version of Wonder Chess Alpha, quote-unquote. December I finished that very first version. Now, the alpha version was not intended to go anywhere. It was something that I just wanted to play with my siblings, something I could have some fun with. It had no art, the cards were the most basic design I could come up with, and everything was boring looking. It was kind of awful. But then I decided to expand it into my Capstone, which is how we ended up with Wonder Chess Beta, which is the cards that you have in front of you. And that was started in about January and ended in November, shortly after I began work with my professional consultant. And it took a really long time because I had to make the art for all of the cards and everything, which I will get into shortly. But essentially, it took a really long time to develop all of this art and ideas and everything for the cards. Now, this is one of my very first actual academic slides, the reading, writing, and communication. Now, the writing part's easy because I wrote a whole short story and a longer form story that is still in development, but I'm doing my best. The reading part was easy as well because I read all of Lewis Carroll's works so many times. I memorized the entire poem, The Jabberwocky, just because I felt like it. I could recite it right now. I'm not going to because it's long, but I could. I also read Tweedledum and Tweedledee along with some of his other poems. And communication comes mostly from my emails with my professional consultant. However, there were also communications that I did with the library in order to get my game set up to playtest, which I will also get into shortly. Now, this is my first math slide. Yes, math principle number 1. Now, if you take a look at the bottom there, that was supposed to be a turtle. I don't even know what happened. That's the best example of my drawing abilities I could have possibly given you. So, as you can see, I had a bit of issues making the art for the cards, because I draw like that. So, my solution was pixel art. I decided that it would be something that was easy for me to pick up and learn, and I could make the cards in a pixel art style pretty easily, which is what I did. Now on the top, from top to bottom, are all of the examples of how my style progressed. Now, there's not a whole lot of difference between the second and third, but it was mostly shading and outline details, which I don't really have to get into here, but know that the second one, or the third one, is a lot better than the second one, especially up close. Math principle number 5 is my usage of tools. Now, the biggest tool that I used was graphic scale. This is where I made all of my cards, the design of the cards themselves, the backs of the cards, which are all made by me, by the way, and it was just really useful, because if you've ever used Microsoft Paint for pixel art, you'll know that it's terrible. It actively works against you, and that was not something I needed. So graphic scale really helped me through that. That's their logo over there on the side, and there's me just making one of the cards. I don't know if any of you have the rose card, but that's the art for it. And in the center there is the low-spec pixel art scaler. Now, low-spec helped me increase the size of my art so that it would actually fit on the cards. Because pixel art is drawn at a low scale, so I had to make it larger so as to actually make it printable. Because as it stands, when you first make it, pixel art just isn't big enough to be printed or processed by a printer, so it causes a lot of issues when you try to scale them up with any other program. And my last math slide, math principle number 6, precision. Every single part of a board game has to work together perfectly. If anything's out of place, the whole thing falls apart. Down there on the bottom right is my very first to-do list, from alpha to beta version. And I implemented all of those changes and more. There are more changes I have to implement from beta version 1.1 to beta version 1.2, but we'll get to that when we get there. And it's a lot of work, because everything needs to be perfect, and nothing's perfect. So you just get it as close as you can, and you need to make sure that everything is at least somewhat compatible with everything else. Otherwise, everything falls apart. I have made so many edits to this game. That is a 15-page rulebook up there in the top right corner. I'm probably going to shorten it down for the full release, but it was 15 pages of explanation because all of the cards are so complicated. Now, this is my trait slide, civility and collaboration. What I did was, I set up my game in the library for people to play tests and give me feedback on what I was doing right and what to do differently. And I also played it with my siblings and many of my friends in order to flesh out the game and figure out what parts didn't work well together. Because, like the precision slide says, it all needs to work together well, otherwise it's not going to do anything at all. It's going to be a terrible game. So this was something that really helped me. And what I learned was that every game needs many changes, obviously, and it's always helpful to work with people to get feedback. And that's how it's applicable to the real world as well. Communication and feedback on your work is always important for every product you will ever make. If you don't get feedback, you can't know for certain if people are actually going to like it. Lessons learned, solution to every problem. Always. Doesn't matter what the problem is, there's a way around it. Find the right tools. Don't use Microsoft Paint for everything. It's not going to work out. Don't use a wrench for a screwdriver job, because screwdrivers are just built for it. It's okay to restart if needed, and pivot. Just find solutions. Call to action. get a little whimsy in your lives. If there's no nonsense, then there's no point in continuing, because the goal isn't just to exist, it's to live. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Miley, and my capstone project is Mental Health First Aid at CCHS. So what mental health first aid is it's being able to notice the signs, learn the actions, and then be the lifeline for someone who may be struggling with mental health issues. My driving question is, how can I help CCHS staff learn more about mental health in teens? A little bit about me is I'm in the health pathway. I'm also involved in many things at the high school, including volleyball, soccer, encore, link crew, NHS, and many other things. I also, outside of school, volunteer in children's ministries at my church. I'm very interested in mental health as well as physical health. It's a big passion of mine, and I plan to go into the medical field after I graduate high school. My professional consultant is Brandon Hopper. He's the Supported Employment Team Lead at Sylvester Health. A summary of my capstone is it is advertising mental health first aid to CCHS staff members. This is a great way for CCHS staff to learn to be able to recognize mental health disorders in teenagers or the early signs that teens may be showing when they're struggling mentally. This is also a great way for the high school to connect better with Sylvester Health, so there's a partnership created so that we can continue to learn more and grow as a community. A timeline of my project is I originally started out with something completely different in mind. I was originally trying to do something with career counseling through Sylvester Health, and the more that I talked to my mentor and the people at Sylvester Health, I just found that it wasn't working. There was a lot of dead ends and I wasn't getting very far. So I spent some time talking to my mentor and kind of working through some things and found that mental health first aid was a great way to make a capstone project, and it was something that I had a lot of interest in as well. I brought those ideas to Mrs. Ortega and she loved it, and we were then able to kind of get things going because she also has some connections to Sylvester Health and the high school both, so it was perfect. After that, I started communicating with the people at Sylvester Health who run mental health first aid, and after I got their approval, I brought it to Mr. Summers so that I could get it approved to bring it into the high school, and then after that, I presented a quick little presentation to the CCHS staff in order to gain interest for those who may want to take the course. After that, I got about 8 people who were confirmed to take the course. I had a couple more people who were interested, and then after that I sent their information out so that they knew exactly what to expect when the course came about. The course date was January 25th of 2023, and this was the day that everyone came together at Sylvester Health and sat through about an 8-hour course to learn about mental health first aid. I did have the opportunity to go to the course and sit through it for a little while and see everything that was going on. I thought it was so amazing to see everything that they were doing. They had posters hanging up of different activities they had done so that they could see different things and different parts of what mental health first aid is. After that, I started working on my presentation, and we started making progress on this presentation. After that, we have my knowledge and communication. So this part of my project was like entirely around the English aspect. I spent a lot of time communicating with many different people. Because I was working with both the high school and Sylvester Health, I was the central point of communication, so I had to be a good communicator on both ends. I had to make sure that everyone knew what was going on and everyone was content with everything happening. I also had to do many different presentations. I presented, as I said, to the CCHS staff, but I also presented to the school board, so I had to make sure that all parts of my presentation were present and everyone knew exactly what I was trying to get through about. At the end of this course, I had everyone take a survey and let me know exactly how they felt my communication was, as well as what their thoughts were on the course. My first math part of this is number 1, which is make sense of problems to persevere in solving them. As I said, I had to change my project, which was a major shift because it was about halfway through my sophomore year and I had started working on my project already and then had to completely nick it and start all over. So that was a big change that I had to make. Also, it was really hard to find the right person to talk to. When I would go to talk to someone, they'd send me to someone else, and then they'd send me to someone else, and it was just a continuous cycle of not knowing necessarily who to talk to. But I had to be resilient and keep working and finding that right person to talk to. I also had to find funding for everything in order to make sure that this course was suitable for everybody and that everyone could participate in it. The next math part that I used is knowledge and communication. constructs viable arguments and critiques the reasoning of others. So I did a survey, as I said, as well as Savista Health. They did the same survey, a similar survey after the course that showed the growth before and after their course to see where these staff members sat on different things. So the two questions, the top is the before and then the bottom is the after. The two questions are, if I express my concerns to youth about mental health signs and symptoms that they are experiencing, it will help them the youth to seek timely support. That is the first graph you see on the left. And as you can see from before, there were some people who were at about a 2, which is not feeling very confident. And by the end, there were no 2s and a lot more 3s, 4s, and 5s. The second question was, if I give information about mental health professionals to a youth experiencing mental health or substance use challenges, it will assist that youth to help. As you can see, there was a lot of people who were in the 3s who felt pretty generally okay with it, and by the end we had just a couple of 3s, but mostly 4s and 5s, which was a great increase after this course. And then from my survey that I sent out, the question that I asked is, do you think that all staff members and coaches should be taking this course? And I got 100% yes from this. I think this is a great opportunity for coaches and staff members to be able to connect on a deeper level with students. A lot of people spend a lot of their time at the high school, whether that be in sports, in school itself, or in other activities, and this is a great way for students to know they have someone to go to if they're in need. Some valuable feedback that I got from the people who took this course is, I think in today's world, it is extremely important to be able to help those who are in need. Having knowledge of warning signs and ways to support people with mental health is incredibly important. And then from another staff member, they said, it is very applicable to our profession and serves as an indicator to the teenagers who need at least one adult who cares about them at CCHS. The next part of my math was number 6, which is attends to precision. This was the biggest math portion of my presentation. In order to get everyone taken care of for this course, I had to get a grant for them to be paid for. This was about $40 per person, which came out to be about $360 total. This paid for their course materials, the course itself, and lunch, so that every person who took this course did not have to pay a penny. On top of that, this course happened during a school day, which meant that I needed substitutes for the teachers who were going to be missing. But I didn't want the high school to have to pay for that. So I got another grant in order for the substitutes to be paid for, which was about $225 per sub, which comes out to about $1,800 total. On top of that, I worked with Dan Copa in order to get continuing education credits for these staff members so that after they took this course, they could get those credits through Power School. The trait that I chose is agency and empowerment, and basically what I did with agency and empowerment is I got guidance on who to talk to. I had to talk to a lot of different people to find the right person, and then on top of that I had to be a very good communicator so that everyone knew exactly what needed to happen. I had to talk to a lot of people I didn't know, so I had to introduce myself and be very resilient and working well with others. I learned that I needed to be prepared on what to talk about, and I had to be a timely speaker. I had to know exactly what I needed from everyone when I went to communicate with them so that there was no confusion whatsoever. I also needed to be willing to take relevant feedback. I had to talk to so many people in different areas of professions throughout this, so because of that they were giving me a lot of feedback on what I could do better and how to make my communication better as well. My application with this was that I was able to get this course set up and get a lot of people certified in this area. My lessons learned with this is I learned effective communication and timely communication. I learned that it is very important to know exactly what it is you need to say and get your point across very quickly. If you didn't know exactly what it was that you needed, then it just created a whole whirlwind of nobody knowing what was going on. I also learned that I had to ask questions, which was hard for me because I always want to do it by myself, but being willing to ask questions with people was very important. My call to action is to have all people at CCHS get mental health first aid certified. I think this is a very important thing. It helps people to learn more about teenagers and helping them and being a good source of contact for them. I also think that it's super important for you to take this course if you get the opportunity, because then you also get to work with the amazing people at Savista Health. I have a ton of acknowledgements. All these people at Canyon City High School and the people who took my course, as well as the people at Savista Health and in the district that helped me as well. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Grace Eastman.
And I'm Trevor Riley.
And we are presenting our capstone on rocket science, a rocket that we built.
So on for a variety. I'm currently in the STEAM pathway. I'm involved in a bunch of different activities in high school, including tennis, encore, band. I think they were just a great way to, well, like, get you involved in the community, knowing everybody.
I'm Grace, and I'm involved in Systems Go, the STEAM pathway. I'm in musical, and I enjoy traveling a lot.
So our driving question is, how could we build a mile-high rocket carrying a 1-pound payload but still stay within a $1,000 budget?
This is our little video of our rocket. Okay, so that was our launch in Texas and Fredericksburg last year.
Okay, our professional consultant was a Systems Go alumni named James Keller. He is currently going to BCC, and after he completes a few credits there, he is going to transfer to the School of Mines.
So the summary of our capstone. We took this capstone and we built a rocket, and our goal was to evaluate the successes and the failures of our rocket. We did it because we enjoy hands-on learning. We want to be future engineers, aerospace engineers, and we wanted to learn how to overcome challenges, which we faced a lot. Some background knowledge that we had was we took the PAE class, Systems Go, our freshman year, and we had basic knowledge of math and physics, but we wanted to learn to further them.
So our timeline and process, we did some basic research, like learning the different materials that you could use, the different types, since there are materials for a nose cone, there are different shapes for that nose cone. Then we learned about rocks, and it's a program that we use to simulate the rockets. That way, before we build it, we can already assume that it is going to succeed if we build it like that. Then we had to learn to manufacture, like mixing the epoxy correctly, and making sure that it dries correctly and things like that. Then we drove down to Fredericksburg, launched our rocket, and after the rocket was launched, we evaluated the flight.
So knowledge and communication. Reading and writing, we researched the different concepts that we learned in class, such as center of mass and center of pressure, which you need for a successful rocket, drag, force, impulse, basic physics concepts, and we also wrote our pre-search paper for this rocket, as well as presenting different slideshows. Communication, we had to communicate scheduling with each other, really work together, ask for help from our classroom advisors, other students in the class, and getting critique from our mentors, making sure that our rocket was going to be as successful as possible, but also still being able to do it ourselves.
Our first math principle is how would we make sense of problems to persevere in solving them. We had to make the 1-pound payload mile-high rocket. So then how could we change that? Let's change that to making it as efficient as possible, because then you could make a rocket mile-high, but how can we do that the best? So we had to be able to cut the weight in the different places that we could, but so that the rocket is still balanced, because if we cut too much weight in the back, then the center of mass is going to be too high up. If we change the pin shape, then the center of pressure isn't going to be in the right place, and we won't have a correct flight. Then we had to make sure to get rid of some unnecessary parts that we had, like maybe a bulkhead that we didn't need, and it was just being redundant.
So our math principle 2, reasons abstractly and quantitatively. So we're using different formulas to be able to break down our problem. How are we going to build a rocket? We learned them in PAE, we learned them in the first semester of our rockets class, just physics formulas. We wanted to actually understand the different numbers. So you can plug anything into an equation, but understanding how each equation affects each other and how changing a unit is going to affect the entire rocket. And using real world examples so that other people can understand them as well. When we were presenting our CDR, maybe we're explaining it to people that don't understand that, and we're trying to simplify it so that it makes more sense.
Then we need to attend to precision. Because we have rocks in, which is going to simulate the rocket, if we don't measure twice, cut once, we aren't going to get it correct. Because any little thing off, like maybe half an inch here, half an inch there, 0.1 grams here, it is not going to fly how we need it to, and then once we are going back to check it versus the simulation, it is going to be all out of whack, and it's not going to work, And once we get to the site, it's just not going to work in the real world, and we'll have to make changes there that won't make it as good as it could have been.
So agility and contribution, what we did, we fixed our rocket with the tools that we had, and when our rocket blew up on the launch pad, we had to fix it very quickly. We fixed it in about 15 or 20 minutes while we were down in Texas. Just having the knowledge of our rocket, being able to fix things last minute. Something that we learned was, even if something goes wrong, you still have to be able to think on your feet and fix it, and you have to keep going. If you get all stressed out and you stop trying, then you're not going to succeed. And our application was that things are always going to go wrong when you're doing anything in life, and the most valuable skill that we can have is to be able to adjust and to redefine the problem. So being able to think on our feet and fix any issues that we faced.
Civility and collaboration. So we were the two group leaders in a 6-person group. We had to learn to be able to distribute the different parts of the rocket, because we didn't give people equal things to do, then we aren't going to get the rocket done when we needed to. We needed to talk to like our advisor, our mentor, being able to collaborate with everyone so that way it can go as successfully as possible.
So lessons learned. We learned a lot over our project. We learned about teamwork, we learned about leadership. We faced a lot of challenges, one being that our rocket exploded after working on it for an entire semester. We had center of mass and center of pressure issues that had us here until 2:30 in the morning trying to fix it the week of our rocket because we didn't check it properly beforehand, and also using teamwork and being able to listen to people who know better than us and who have more experience, and knowing that we can do anything that we set our minds to.
Call to action. We really hope that this inspires future engineers and people that don't think that they can do something, but if they are passionate enough about it, that they can go out and they can go out to do the thing that they want to do.
So our acknowledgements are Mr. Ford, our Systems Go teacher, Ms. Hyatt, she is the head of Systems Go, she runs it all. Ms. Satterley, she helped us with transportation on our trip to Texas, and James Keller, who was our professional consultant.
Alrighty. So my name is Kate Hutchison. My capstone was on how we can improve our marching band sound system. So I'd first like to talk quickly about me. I am a part of the Arts and Hospitality pathway. I am actively participating in band, encore, and musical, and as a hobby, I like to do music production. And in the future, I am planning on going into sound engineering as well as front of house engineering. So I'd like to quickly also talk about my professional consultant. My professional consultant is Justin Maxwell. He is a sound engineer. He is a bass player as well as the engineer for a band known as Offering of the Dust. He first started doing audio-related stuff at the age of 10 with helping his father, as his father used to own a studio, and he would be a runner and do all the running around stuff, setting up all the cables and microphones and all that stuff. So the summary of my capstone was I got a $10,000 budget to improve our marching band's sound system, and some of the things that the purpose of this project was to help benefit our band, but also I wanted to help, improve the quality of the equipment that we had. And my goal was to, like I said, improve the quality of our sound system and make it easier to operate and future-proof. My background information before starting this project was pretty limited, as I had only little experience when it came to sound, and that was the occasional times when I would help Fisher with his sound stuff. And I also had a little bit of experience with that by working at the radio station for a little bit as my internship at KRLN radio station. So I have my timeline of my capstone of this whole project from when I first started doing all the research, and then when I presented the very first project on how I actually was able to receive this $10,000 budget, as well as when we have created each of our orders, and just all the real key things. So for my knowledge and communication, I had to make sure with communication I would have to communicate pretty thoroughly with a bunch of people, including Mr. Wiley, Mr. Fisher, to get his advice, as well as my professional consultant, since he knew what he was doing, and to get his input on the things. I also, for my communication, have a link to that presentation that I presented to our band boosters. So for my first math principle, reasons obstructively and quantitatively, I wanted to redo something with our front ensemble by how we would wire things. So I had to figure out all our cable distances, quantity of the cables, as well as the quality of cables we would be using since we were making custom cables. For my second math principle, principle number 3, I had a link to a Google Sheet which breaks down each individual item that we bought for its price, as well as the amount that we would need for it, as well as the total. For my third principle, math principle number 4, models mathematics, I have, as you can see, a wiring diagram of how we have our current system hooked up during the marching season. And another thing I have is a model that I 3D modeled for a part of my capstone, which I'm no longer doing, but I was modeling new speaker carts as well as a mixer cart for the head of the sound. But I handed that project off over to one of my friends, Dalton Kurth, for his capstone, and these are some of the models that he has designed and has been working on for the last little bit, because it's his capstone. So for civility and collaboration, I had to, first of all, make sure I was able to stay calm under pressure, as it was our first time using this whole new system, so I have ran into many issues, at least like once per competition before we would get started. I had to run off, get everything fixed because we were having some tech issues before we can proceed with our show. And I also had to train a lot of the people that were going to be handling the equipment how to properly do so. And I also gave Mr. Fisher, Mr. Wiley, a in-depth overview of how our system was going to work. And I also, for collaboration, handed off a little bit of my project to Dalton Kurth for his capstone. For integrity and leadership, I had to understand what the band's needs were when it came to sound, and also I had to research cost-effective ways of how to obtain our goals while trying to find deals and stay within our budget. But I also wanted to make sure it would be good enough to last for many years afterwards, as well as producing a quality system. And for leadership, I had to take charge and completely do all the work on my own by researching every single thing and everything we might need, and also teach others how to properly move, store, and operate our equipment. So my lessons learned over this project was trying to make the band sound louder and also be able to hear clearly through our new system with our sound reinforcement, as well as the front ensemble. I also had to make sure that if we did order anything new, that it would arrive on time and be able to get set up before our next competition and properly know how to do whatever it is that we just changed beforehand. And I also plan on furthering my education in sound engineering, and I'm also wanting to further proceed with this project next year, and I have already a few plans for next year. So here I have a picture, and it's worth 1,000 words. This picture was taken during this year's marching show, and my call to action was to use things that you're passionate about to improve the world around you. So my acknowledgement, I'd like to give a thanks to Mr. Fisher, Mr. Wiley, the band boosters especially, as well as my professional consultant for whenever I would ask him questions. So before we move on to the table of contents and ask any questions, I'd first like to actually talk about what I have on stage. So over in the far right is our speaker carts, and the smaller one is what we originally were using for the last few years. And then the one with all the extra stuff is what we have right now. And then closest to me is some of the stuff that we got this year for the head of the sound system that would be doing all the processing and controlling. And I'm going to quickly step over there because there was something, even though we just got this equipment, there were some things that we had to adjust. And when we had to adjust some stuff, we had to take apart this and modify the insides because of the way that we had our stuff set up. We had to rotate this to make it sound the best so that it would it would do what we needed it to.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight as I display months of hard work and dedication. The completion of my capstone project is a huge milestone in my academic career, and I can't wait to share with you my insights and successes. So without further ado, let me begin. This is a video from my capstone. Okay, raise your hand if you want to do song test. I'm gonna spare you the time and not play the whole thing because it's just me talking to my students. Oh, rock, paper, scissors. Alright, so my capstone was surrounded around art. I said to myself, how can I benefit this community? And I realized that my whole life, I personally have struggled to communicate my thoughts and feelings. So I asked myself, why? I came to the conclusion that I was never given the proper tools. So I said, okay, how can I change that for kids that are younger than me in our community? And so I realized art. Art is how I go and I communicate my feelings. So the question that has driven me throughout my whole capstone project is how can I help kids in the community with self-expression? But before I get too deep into my capstone project, let me introduce myself. My name is Caitlin Keller. I'm a junior here at CCHS, and I'm currently in the science pathway. I hope to embark in criminal sciences at the Northern Colorado University in my future. I'm a cheerleader and love to shred up the mountain in the winter. Let me now introduce you to my professional consultant, Ms. Chastity Taylor. She's a seasoned administrative assistant and has an exceptional track record in real estate. She's helped me put this whole sideshow together, and I truly couldn't have done it without her. So, let's really get into it. A short summary of my capstone is basically that I provided a short ceramics class for kids in the community in 3rd through 5th grade. These kids really were great. The 3 goals for my capstone were, for one, for it to be 100% free of charge. I didn't want kids who didn't have enough, money to go and do extracurriculars to miss out on an opportunity like this. My second goal was for each kid to learn at least 3 basic pottery skills. I not only wanted them to learn how to really express their feelings, but I also wanted them to learn some actual pottery skills. And of course, my last goal was for them to really grasp the concept of self-expression and how there's so many outlets on how you can do that. I used all my previous knowledge. I've taken ceramics 1, 2, and advanced ceramics, so I have lots of it. I love ceramics, and I just couldn't wait to really share all of my knowledge and experience with these kids. The process. This was a lengthy process, as you can imagine. Planning was definitely what took the longest, because not only did I have to think of a capstone project, but then I had to be realistic with costs and time and all of that. So then it came to, okay, how can I, afford this, and how can I make this work and make these kids get as much enjoyment as possible? So I found I found a website called Grip Tape. They basically give out money to students who want to do more than just their regular classes. So I applied for a grant and went through that whole process, and I got the grant awarded to me, which was so exciting. I then went out and purchased materials like clay and everything that I needed. I sent out advertisements to every principal in the district, which our principals are incredible. They got it out to their students like that, so fast. They were so great and really helped me through the whole process. Then I started having parents email me with their kids signing up, which was so great, and I felt so excited that all these parents really wanted to get their kids in this class. Then I, of course, had my class, which was even more incredible and so fun. These are some notable events. So here on the left, you can see I received my $500 prepaid Visa gift card, which was incredible. That not only did I get this grant, but it was $500, which was incredible. Here on the right, you can see this is the email that I received from Grip Tape that basically said, hey, here's your grant. So it was so exciting, and then went through that whole process. Here's some more artifacts. These are my favorite pieces that I had made in advanced ceramics. I've used the wheel, I've learned Pretty much all that this high school, is what's available to me. So these are some of my favorite pieces that I made. Knowledge and communication. I used my previous knowledge, as I said, of ceramics to clearly organize and plan a ceramics class. I really wanted my directions to be clear and concise to these kids. I didn't want them to just say it to them, I wanted to show them. So I taught them slab, pinch, and coil. These are the 3 basic pottery skills that I felt were so important to learn. They're the fundamentals. They're really what builds up and shows you just how great ceramics is. I used mastery, communication, and knowledge in several instances, including sending out my advertisements and newsletters to all the principals, teaching my class, of course, the most important part, and communicating with parents. Student safety was my #1 priority. I didn't want any students to feel nervous or feel like something could go wrong. I wanted each student to come in like they knew who I was and felt really strong and really confident. These are some more artifacts. You can see here on the far left, these are the flyers that I sent out to each principal, and they sent it out to all their kids who were eligible, or in grades 3 through 5. Then here in the middle, you can see these were the emails that I sent out to the principals, and on the far right, you can see that's my pre-search paper. Knowledge and communication. My first math principle that I chose was modeling with mathematics. Like I said earlier, figuring out how to buy supplies. Clay is expensive. Ceramics and pottery materials are expensive. So figuring out how to get that grant, applying for it, and going through that whole process with grip tape was really fun and was really enjoyable. Getting to do something outside of school like that is really a fun process, which at first seemed definitely a little stressful, but once you get into it, it was so enjoyable. I used mathematical principles to solve real-world problems. Like I said, applying for that grant and going through that whole process with my grip tape person was so fun and just super incredible. My second choice for my math principle was using appropriate tools strategically. I used things like a scale to make sure each student got an even amount of clay. I didn't want them to feel restricted in not having enough, but I also didn't want them to feel too overwhelmed in having too much. So making sure that each kid got an appropriate amount felt really important to me. I also used a calculator to keep track of budget. I wanted to make sure I knew how much I was spending and what I was spending it on. And that's when my notes and receipts came in. I wanted to make sure I kept track of everything so that if the grip tape people wanted to know, hey, what are you spending your money on, that they knew exactly what I was spending my money on. And my third and final math principle that I chose was making simple problems to persevere in solving them. Like I said, needing materials, so expensive. I wanted clay, tools, mats, prizes, and snacks. Even though some of those things are not necessities, they definitely increased the enjoyment of just how much, my kids wanted to be there. I put on the flyers, snacks would be included, and I think that definitely, was like, oh hey, this sounds like a lot of fun. And then obviously, lack of funds, making sure I knew how much I was spending and making sure that, okay, is this something that I really need, or should I go and spend this money elsewhere? The 2 traits that I chose to show you guys today was stability and collaboration. I made an entire spreadsheet with parent information, phone numbers, allergies, emergency contacts. If there was someone else picking up, I wanted to make sure I was aware. I really initiated collaboration during communication with my peers. My main goal was to keep an open mind. It's so important when doing something like this that you're staying open-minded so that you can improve not only yourself, but the project in general. I really learned that keeping an open mind, it can lead to so many greater, and it can improve so much of everything. I will use that in everyday life. I really take, a lot of responsibility with everything I do in my classes, getting my homework done. And so keeping an open mind to new strategies or new ways that I can better myself, I think is really important. So here's the big spreadsheet I had. I did block out some information. I wanted to make sure I didn't leak anyone's phone number or anything like that. So as you can see, I had, the student name, parent's phone number, everything, super important. I encourage you all to really introduce yourselves to art and watch just what it can do for you. It's such a soul-pleasing activity and can really show just how much, it can really show you how to get your thoughts and feelings out other than just speaking it and saying it. So I wanted to acknowledge these amazing people. I wanted to acknowledge Ms. Van Warden for helping me through this whole thing, Ms. Cushman for donating me her room. I definitely couldn't have done it without the art room. room, Chastity Taylor for helping me through the whole thing, and of course my mom and family for watching me present this whole thing, and you know, over and over again, they probably know the presentation just about as well as I do at this point, so. Alrighty, thank you guys.
A book is a gift you can open again and again. My driving question was, how can I give children in my community better access to books? Hi, my name is Kata Johnson. I'm a senior in high school. I have a 3.9 cumulative GPA. I had an internship at Canyon Exploratory School working with first through fourth grade. I had an internship at Rose Injectables. In the near future, I plan to go to college to obtain my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, and with that degree, I plan to pursue a career in healthcare. This is my professional consultant, Brenda Foster. She has taught first and second grade in Canyon City for 18 years. To summarize my capstone, I built and placed 4 outdoor libraries at different schools in Canyon City. I did this with the intention of giving all children in my community better access to books at all times of the year. So this is a map of Canyon City. The blue dot is the Canyon City Public Library. The yellow dots are the libraries that I have placed, and the orange dot is where I wanted to place another library at Harrison School, but unfortunately I never got a response from them. I'll now be going through my timeline and process, which is what I have provided you a copy of, because I'll be going through it in pictures so you're able to visualize with me. My first date was March 20th, which is when I got into contact with all the principals of the schools and gained their permission to do my project there. March 21st, I began contact with Scott Morton, the Director of Operations for Canyon City Schools. April 22nd was my first Home Depot trip, the first of many, and that is where I got all of my initial supplies to begin my project. April 30th was my very first day of building, and that was a day of learning for sure, but it was a super fun day. May 24th, I went to all the schools because I had asked them to participate in a book donation so that I would have books to get the library started originally. The very next days, I went to those schools again and gave out rewards for the classes that donated the most books. June 2nd, I met with Ron Cook and Preston Lober, and we went around to the different schools to check out the locations and see where my library would be best fit. June 9th, I placed the posts at Washington and Canyon Exploratory School, and then the very next day, we were able to finish the libraries and put the actual box portion on after the cement had dried. So that meant that CES and Washington were completed. July 28th, the posts for McKinley and Lincoln were placed, and then due to some weather, we had to wait a couple days to finish those, unlike the other ones. So on August 9th, the final libraries were completed. And those were the same day, again, like I said, August 9th, but I had too many pictures, so I put them on 2 different slides. Now, October 9th is an extremely special day to me. I was driving to the store, and I happened to look over and see a child actually using the libraries that I had created. It was such a special moment for me seeing that I had actually made an impact in somebody's life. Because I knew, but actually seeing it with my own eyes just gave me such an immense amount of pride. Now moving on to knowledge, reading, and writing. I wrote a pre-search paper. I wrote a note that I placed onto all the libraries stating what they were, why they're there, as well as how to contact me if anything's wrong or if they need more books. Another way that I had reading and writing was through professional emails. As I mentioned before, I sent many emails including to Scott Morton, all the principals, as well as many teachers. For communication, I would say communication is probably one of the biggest pieces of my project. I had so much. One of the things I was most nervous for was my presentations. As you see pictured in the right, I had a meeting or presentation with the building leadership team at Lincoln, and that was super intimidating for me. I had never done something like that, but once they heard my idea, they were super into it, and I was able to place one at Lincoln. As I said before, I also had meetings with the principals, and then meetings with the groundsmen. Again, an unusual experience. I ended up getting in the truck with them, and they took me around and showed me the best places. Again, lots of communication with Scott Morin. He was extremely helpful throughout this process, and I definitely appreciate him a lot. Lastly, I made an Instagram account to be able to have community outreach and try to let more people know about these libraries, as well as when they're being restocked and things like that. Now, on to my first math principle. Make sense of problems to persevere in solving them. So, during my project, we started with a blueprint that I had found online. This blueprint had a slanted roof, which you can see in the picture on the left. So we did follow the blueprint to a T for the first library. And then with that, we did some trial and error, found out that those were extremely difficult to do because of all the angle cuts and things like that. So we actually ended up transforming those boxes into a square cut to solve these problems, because trying to make these angle cuts, we were not very good at it, and that was wasting materials, which inadvertently was wasting money. Now on to math principle 5. Uses appropriate tools strategically. As you can see, I used a vast amount of tools during this project. I'm only going to be going through a few just so that we can save some time. One of my most important tools was a miter saw. I used a miter saw for all of my angle cuts, and so for things like the door and the trim. All of those cuts were made at a 10-degree angle. Another important saw I used was a table saw. I used a table saw also for the door, but that was to make a 1/4-inch cut in the middle so that I could put plexiglass in, which was 1/8 of an inch. Now, moving on to math principle 6, attends to precision. Placing the posts was an extremely precise job because we wanted to make sure everything was super level so that everything would go well. To make my holes precise, I was able to use a pothole rig from K.R. Swordberger, and doing that, I was able to make cuts that were quick but also stayed clean because it sucked up the mud as we were cutting into the ground. With this pothole rig, I made the holes 3 feet deep and then a dimension of 8 inches, or diameter, sorry, not dimension. With that, I used a ratio, so for every foot of the hole, I used 1 bag of concrete, so for 3 feet of the hole, it was 3 bags of concrete. Now on to my trade, civility and collaboration. As I had mentioned before, I communicated with so many people throughout this project. I would say I communicated with about 16 people consistently. I had 6 planned meetings, and I spent so many weekends with my dad when he was helping me build, at least 12 plus. And then just listening to the perspectives of everybody I was working with, whether that be Scott Morin or my dad. So I would take their ideas, mix them with mine, just to create the best final product I could. I learned that when asked, my community will come together, especially for the benefit of kids. And without the contributions of my community, this project would not have been able to come together as well as it did. How I will apply that? So, I learned that I am very good at planning and following through on big projects. With that, I learned that I am able to bring people together and maximize potential. So, as I just mentioned, I learned so much throughout this project. I now have different construction skills that I definitely didn't have before, so maybe something breaks in my house or a friend needs some help. I now know how to use a vast amount of tools. Another thing I'd say I learned throughout this project was communication and collaboration skills, which can definitely be applied in my future, especially in my nursing career, while I'll be working with doctors, other nurses, and even patients. Being able to communicate and collaborate is an extremely important skill that I have definitely learned more about with this project. I also learned that I truly do have the power to make an impact, and what that has done is inspire me to do that in the future. In my future, I will definitely be doing everything I can to make a difference in my community. My call to action is for people to use these libraries so that they can definitely remain going in Canyon City. I also would encourage somebody to take on this project, whether that be a capstone or just something fun to do to make a difference. These are the people that I would like to acknowledge that made this project possible for me. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Tony Croce, and this is my capstone project, Good Golly, Miss Volley, Let's Exercise. My driving question for my capstone project is how can I increase physical activity and social interaction within the community by hosting a grass volleyball tournament? A little bit about myself. I am a senior at the high school, and one of my absolute favorite things to do at the high school is play volleyball. And so I wanted to bring that love of volleyball into my capstone project. For college, I'll be going to Bethany College to major in exercise science with a minor in coaching, as well as compete in volleyball and track while going through college. For my professional consultant, I had Tara John. She is a head volleyball coach here at the high school, a CrossFit coach, and a cosmetologist. The main reason that I had her for my professional consultant is because she has a lot of high school volleyball experience and knowledge, and she had different means of advertising to help me promote my overall capstone project. So my hook for you guys, I ask you, would you rather run for an hour or play a sport for an hour? Now, majority of people would answer play a sport for an hour, which led me to the goal of my capstone project, which was to provide a grass volleyball tournament to promote exercise and social interaction within our community. And this is a very community-based project that I decided to hold, which allows people to stay healthy in a community setting as well as staying socially active. One of the other purposes of my capstone project was to also give money to Canyon City Volleyball Program, which was donated from the proceeds of my capstone. A little bit summary overall of my tournament. It was held June 10th at CCMS. There were 15 teams signed up and 13 competed. We had 4 teams in the adult division and 11 in the high school division. Teams signed up through the QR code, which you can see on the posters up on the screen. It was $40 per team to compete, as well as t-shirts and different concessions were sold during the actual tournament. During the tournament, it was round robin play. There were 4 nets total set up. There was a pre-tournament survey with registration, and winners were given prizes at the end. For a timeline of my capstone project, in fall of 2022, this was my planning period, and so I had to get all the necessary tools needed to begin planning my capstone. That would be finding location, finding where to rent equipment, stuff like that. In spring of 2023, I was able to organize event details as well as release registration, and so this gave participants about a month to register for my capstone. Week before the tournament was a registration deadline, and this was time for me to organize pools and set up teams within different pools. On Saturday, June 10th is when I held my tournament, and then the summer of 2023 is when I was working on my overall presentation. For my knowledge in ELA, one of the main portions of knowledge that I needed to learn was how to use new technologies such as QR codes. I also need to have knowledge in communicating with others in a professional setting, especially when talking to my mentor and different distributors and businesses along the way, and also being able to have knowledge on providing safety waivers for all the participants to make sure that everything was done correctly. For communication, I had to be very thorough when communicating the rules and expectations for the tournament. That way everything was done equally and everyone was on the same page while playing. I was also interacting with participants throughout the tournament. I was actually playing in the tournament, and so it gave me the ability to talk to people during the tournament to see what it was like from their point of view and make sure that I fixed anything that needed to be fixed along the way. I also needed to communicate well with my net distributor, which was Colorado Volleyball Connections, when renting nets and finding out dates to go and pick nets and drop nets back off. For my math principles, one of my math principles I used was using appropriate tools strategically. This was mainly getting the most important things out of the way. So checklists for deadlines, generating Google Forms, transferring information to Google Sheets, using QR codes, and having specific bracket structures for each division. And this was also went into my overall registration for the tournament. As you can see on the screen, I have my pre-tournament survey. This is just 2 examples of questions that I had on my survey. One of them was, if there were more events like this, would you sign up for them? And how many days of the week did you exercise? One of the papers I handed out actually had the tournament questions on there. And so this gave me an idea of how often people exercise, what their social interaction it looks like, and if events like this were to be held in the future, would people participate in them? Math principle number 6, attends to precision. One of the main things that I needed to know was how to utilize knowledge of others who's experienced tournaments like this. And so being able to participate in other tournaments within the region and seeing how they were run definitely gave me an idea of how to run a tournament for myself. I also communicated with peers to be able to find appeals for different age groups, knowing what form of social media to go on for each division. Like I said, with the adult and high school division, you wouldn't want to do Facebook for the high school and Snapchat for the adult division. And so being able to see the difference between that. And precision for this was the name of the game. Being able to find a facility, equipment rental, concessions, and event support for my capstone was all things that I needed to be on top of and on task. Looks for and makes use of structure, math principle number 7. One of the things I needed to find was suitable dates, location, and method of getting equipment to have an organized tournament. One of the other uses of structure I had to use was finding a new location when the high school was not an option for my tournament. I also had to organize payment that was simple and easy to use, which eventually in the end was just participants paying cash up front. That way I made sure I was paid for the tournament and participants also didn't have to worry about any technology problems. I also had to have a game plan if a team drops out, which was something that I had to deal with. And finally, establishing an accurate pool format based on the brackets and the amount of teams that I had within my capstone project. Up on the screen, you can see an example of a tournament bracket. Just a little bit about it. With each team, the teams went through pool play to begin with, and then once we found out who was the top in each pool, it went to tournament play after that. And so each team at their net, they had a pool sheet that looked similar to one on the screen. And for this, they filled out how many wins they had, the point differentiation of each of their games, and who they played. And so this made it organized for the teams and an easy way to follow a schedule. And then this is another example of the tournament for the championship bracket, which I had to use after I figured out which teams placed first in which pools and divisions. For the money breakdown, my overall profit from my capstone project was $740. By the time you subtracted net rentals, concession costs, t-shirt costs, it led my total donation to Canyon City High School volleyball program to being $235, which Coach John was actually able to use for a new iPad for statistics during volleyball games. My main trait that I think I did pretty successfully during my capstone was agility. Being able to base my tournaments on similar grass tournaments that I have played in gave me an idea of how to run them and how to do it successfully. Also being ready for weather, rescheduling, teams dropping out, and finding a new area. Luckily, I didn't have to worry about weather or rescheduling, but I did have 2 teams drop out the day of, and so I kind of had to pivot and see a different way of organizing my pools. And I also had to find a new area to hold my capstone project from the high school moving to CCMS. And finally, finding the best ways to advertise the tournament, whether it be social media, posters around the high school, or even putting up flyers in businesses around the community. For contribution, I was able to provide a grass volleyball tournament for participants to enjoy within the community. I was also giving a valued contribution, a fun way to exercise and stay socially active within our community. For agency, I had to be able to get rent nets from a distributor that was not in Canyon City. It was actually in Denver, about an hour and a half away. And so I was able to go through Colorado Volleyball Connections. I also had to switch my mentor and gear towards more independence because of it. In the beginning, I had a different mentor, and once meeting with them a couple times, I realized that it wasn't the best path for me just because it wasn't a very hands-on experience. It was definitely more what they wanted to do and how they wanted to see the process run, and so I definitely needed to switch gears with that. For empowerment, getting information out early to gain more participants, and also advertising beyond Canyon City within Pueblo, Salida, and Colorado Springs. Some lessons learned within my capstone. I wish I would have handled shirts a little differently. During the overall process of doing it, I had it where they answered the question on the survey of when they wanted shirts, and not very many people were actually truthful when it came time to buy shirts, so I lost a little bit of money on that. I would also like to go through a different program to order less expensive nets and to start with my current mentor. My call to action to you guys is to get out there and participate in community-led sporting events for your physical and emotional health. All right. Thank you very much.
On October 2nd, 2023, my friend Dakota Miller passed away in a tragic car accident. He was killed on impact. Luckily, he's with my Lord now. And so I dedicate this to God first and foremost, and secondly, to him. Today I will be sharing the question and how to answer, how can my music inspire hope for those facing life struggles? Alright, so a little bit about myself. My passion for music came around 8th grade during COVID when I needed an escape from life. After dealing with hardships such as divorce, neglect, and abuse, music became my source of strength that got me through the hardest times. Despite how much music helped me, I realized there was a God-shaped hole inside my heart that needed to be filled. Only Jesus could do that. After Jesus became Lord of my life, I felt a strong calling on my life to pursue music and to become a conduit God would use to inspire hope in others. I took this to heart and began to put His words into practice. For the next 4 years, I would learn guitar, learn to sing, learn to write songs that provided a hopeful message everyone could enjoy. In all areas of music, I have excelled. My many accomplishments, awards, and positions held can all attest to this. Now, I'm not saying this to gloat, but rather to explain the seriousness of the message I hope to convey to you and to the world. I have come to bear witness to the truth that is inside of me through my music. All right, so one of the biggest helpers of my entire projects is Courtney Davenport. Courtney has over 20 years of music experience and is currently the worship leader at Wellspring Church in Florence. Not only this, but Courtney serves a second job to support his wife Chandra and their 5 amazing kids. He is also a songwriter and holds platforms on Spotify with titles such as Imagers and Davy Davy. Courtney is nothing short of noble when it comes to helping me with my passion. As you can see, my timeline here, there is a lot of posts. That is not including the many moments I have spent in my bedroom writing songs, which has been a lot. I have worked tirelessly to give the world a familiar hope with a new tune. In summary, I have created a 6-song EP that explores profound emotional connections in my life, from depression to the power of words, coming of age, and hope. My music has and will continue to inspire hope and courage for those grappling with life's obstacles on a global scale through platforms like Spotify, as well as on a local level through coffee shops. In ways I have acquired knowledge is through statistics on mental health, as you will see on future slides. I've also learned how to write lyrics. I've also learned the importance of communication through constant emails between me and my mentor explaining what changes needed to occur in order to make my songs more catchy, more appealing. All right, so one of the biggest crises facing humans today is the war on mental health. According to the World Health Organization, in a study in 2023, around 264 million people were affected by depression yearly. Another 284 million people claim to have anxiety. Finally, a whopping 700,000 people commit suicide yearly. With my music, I hope to stop the curve of these statistics before it gets worse than it already is. Ways I've already been doing this is by using appropriate tools strategically. Some of the tools I use is my Martin guitar here, which I use to express my message of hope creatively through music, along with, as you can see on the second bubble, is my mentor's Focusrite audio interface, which allows me to plug in and record my music. Finally, on the top bubble is the computer where I use the software Logic that allows me to fine-tune my mistakes and make it more catchy to my audience. Ways I've made use of structure is by ordering my songs in a way that creates a story of hope for others to grasp onto. In a finer view, I have structured each of my songs to have key things such as verses, choruses, bridges, etc. in order to make my songs more catchy and memorable so my audience could come back to that message of hope every time. The traits and skills I chose to present to you guys today is agility and contribution. Through agility, I have learned to reflect on the unexpected circumstances on my dear friend's death. I never understood the impact depression had on people. It had on me until after he died. I don't want anyone to go through this world without having an outlet to go to. If we'll go back to those statistics, 700,000 people that commit suicide yearly. I'm here to stop that, decrease that. And through that, I have contributed to society by tailoring my music to serve a purpose, to serve that message of hope for those struggling with depression. Now you may ask, what have I learned through this whole Capstone process? Well, by sharing, I've created hopeful music that has and will inspire others. I've also overcome challenges such as learning how to deal with my friend's death and how to understand depression. Finally, I have used and learned key skills and traits such as agility and contribution in order to boost my career in music ministry. Now I'll leave you all with this. Take my advice, listen to my music that got me through my lowest points, especially through life's roughest seasons. You never know, you may find yourself finding renewed strength for today and hope for tomorrow. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. Did you know that Canyon City has been an official city since April 3rd, 1872? That's 151 years. So my driving question is, how can I help facilitate and deepen Canyon City's love of its rich history? The Canyon City Seed Project by Caitlin McBroom. Hi, I'm Kayla McBroom. I'm a senior at CCHS. I'm also a 3-year varsity cheerleader at CCHS, but I've been cheerleading for 11 years. And I would like to continue my cheerleading journey at CSU Pueblo and get my degree in engineering. And I've also been on Link Crew for 2 years. So my mentor in my capstone is Greg Dorito. I asked Greg to be my mentor because he's lived in Fremont County his whole life. And I hope this would help me gain knowledge and history about the sea. Greg also has a degree in mass communications, which helped me write my historical article about the sea. So my timeline and process. So January 29th, 2022, Greg and I went to the Royal Gorge Regional Museum and History Center to gain knowledge about the sea. So that's a picture of me and Greg in front of the History Center with the sea behind us, with the history we gained from there. And then February 3rd, I started talking and emailing my team and began my capstone journey. So that's a picture of my first email with Mayor Smith, and she told me that there was already a team starting to renovate the sea, but they needed someone to find the history about the sea, and that I could step in and help. And then February 10th, John and Ann Plummer emailed me with lots of information about the sea because they heard I was doing research about it. And then February 18th was the first time I actually went up to the sea, and I helped my team carry materials like sheet metal. So in that photo, that's me carrying a piece of sheet metal. And then February 21st, I went back up to the sea to take pictures. So that's a picture of the original sea covered by the wooden, what's it called? The wooden thing that holds the sheet metal. And then March 2nd, I interviewed Jeff Mueller, who graduated from CCHS in 1969. Jeff helped build the original sea, so that's a photo of the notes I took from our interview. And then March 28th, I took all the history that I gathered and all the history I got from our interviews and wrote my article, and you guys have that in your folder that I provided you. And then March 31st, I was interviewed by Carrie Cannonberry about the Canyon City Sea Project and was published in the Daily Record. So that's also in your folder. That's the picture of the article that she wrote and published about the project. And then April 2nd, the new sea was revealed in the 150th Jubilee in Canyon City Fair. So that's a picture of me with the new sea behind me, and I'm holding my article. Throughout my capstone, I learned how to interview the community to gather information and history about the sea. With the information my mentor and I collected, I was able to write an informational article about the sea, and I was able to learn how to write clear, formal emails to communicate efficiently with my team. How did I use RWC in my capstone? I used previously learned English skills in RWC and did research at the Royal Gorge Regional Museum and History Center and interviews to collect information to write a well-developed article about the history of the sea. So that's a picture of my article that I gave to you. And then on the back is a map of the 150th Jubilee and City Fair that was right outside the high school. Math Principle 1. Make sense of problems to persevere in solving them. During the capstone process, it was difficult to communicate and interview with COVID-19 precautions. I had a time limit on this project to get all the history found into an article before the 150th Jubilee and City Fair. I got to interview Mr. and Mrs. Plummer through email, and contacting my team was also done through email. I would wait for these responses to these emails instead of being able to talk to them in person due to COVID-19 restrictions. My team also had to request access to the sea every time we wanted to work on it because it was on DOC property. And our team got in trouble with the current warden for going to one of the multiple guard shacks up on the Skyline Drive. So that's a photo of me in one of those guard shacks, and he called us, and he was like, "You need to get out of that guard shack." So we did get in trouble, but it was kind of funny. And unreliable resources were a big part of finding the true origin of the sea. When my mentor and I were researching about the sea, we had to check our sources to make sure that they were reliable. When Mr. and Mrs. Plummer gave us information about the sea being built, we had to be able to prove this history through research. So, yeah. Math Principle 6, Attends to Precision. My mentor and I had to think of ways to find history about the sea. We also got to debunk original assumptions of the sea's creation. One way we tried to find an estimate of when the sea was made, we looked at satellite images of Canyon City trying to see when the sea showed up. So that top upper image is actually a satellite image of Canyon City. We looked at multiple satellite images, and this is an image after the sea was built. One of the other assumptions of how the sea was built, that prisoners from the old Maxi prison made the sea, we started to research the past wardens who ran the prison, trying to see what year the sea would have been built. So that's also a picture of all the past wardens, and we tried to pinpoint what warden would have had let the prisoners made the sea, but we eventually debunked these assumptions when Mr. and Mrs. Plummer emailed us with information about the sea. Mr. Plummer was a coach at CCHS in 1968. He organized the idea and the work of the sea. This turned all of our research around. My mentor and I started to look up newspaper articles about the class of 1969, constructing the sea. Eventually, everything came together. Math Principle 7, looks for and makes sense of structure. My mentor and I started to look up newspaper articles about the class of 1969 constructing the sea. We eventually came upon yearbook pictures of the class of 1969 constructing the sea. We found out a group of students called MOTAC, the members of Tiger Athletic Club, which is that top photo of those students standing in this T, and the National Honor Society helped with the creation of the sea. Mr. and Mrs. Plummer also provided information on how the class of 1969 built the sea. Mr. Plummer was able to get paint donated to paint the rocks on Skyline, and he got permission to build the sign from DOC, Canyon City, and the high school principal, John Griffin, at the time. This quote's from Ann Plummer about John Plummer. He had always admired the signs in Salida and Gunnison when they went on school athletic trips. John Plummer only could remember two of the high schoolers' names that helped with the creation of the sea, Jeff Mueller and Steve Rossi. Greg and I eventually interviewed Jeff Mueller at Doritos about the sea, and he did confirm all the information that John Plummer had given us. I showed civility by joining a team of leaders. I also reached out to the community in an attempt to gather information about the sea. I used collaboration to work with my mentor and my team. In the future, I can apply this learning to working with others and keeping an open mind to listening to others' opinions while wanting to get something done in the future. Throughout my capstone project, I learned how to collaborate by working with my team of people. I also learned how to adapt, communicate by texting, emailing, and talking to others. In my capstone, there was lots of trial and error. I also had to learn how to do extensive research about topics. So I'm a cheerleader at CCHS, and I wanted to bring spirit and pride to Canyon City, while also showing Canyon City's youth its rich history. Both of my parents graduated from Canyon City High School. This town is very significant to me. And my capstone's call to action is when you see something in your community that needs to be fixed, fix it.
Okay, so my capstone, for the hook, in my past I overcame my own personal experience with sexual assault, and I found the only way to get through that is to feel heard and to be supported. And with my capstone, I just wanted to bring awareness to that and be the person for somebody else in this community that I did not have. So the title of my capstone is I Am a Survivor, and my driving question was, how can I help victims of crime? To introduce myself a little bit, first my name is Carly Cipher. My pathway was skilled trade and security. I do pageants, I am a performer, and after high school I plan to attend beauty school and continue with social media advocacy. So my professional consultant was Miss Marcia Hughes, and she worked for the school district for a little while, and she's now currently the president of the district chapter in the Royal Gorge region of an organization called Zonta. And the summary of my capstone project, I joined Zonta and partnered with them, which is a women-run organization, and they help women throughout the whole world, so it's international. So I got with them and I got to join their group and do many different things with them. And I attended events and spread awareness online. And the purpose of my capstone was to educate the community on sexual assault, share my story, and allow others to feel supported. The goal of my capstone was to make an outreach, so I wanted a lot of publicity within my capstone and touch the hearts and make connections with other survivors, and most importantly to me, as I wanted to change the stigma that society created around sexual assault. For my background, of course, my story, I wanted to share that and let other people know that they're not alone. And I found ways to heal through my trauma that aren't necessarily conventional that you'll see or hear from a therapist. So I just wanted to share those and let other people know that there's not always just one road that you can follow to get through your problems. For my timeline and process, I put a little bit of background. So March 2020, I started researching advocacy and healing tactics. April 2020, I posted my first awareness video for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. May of 2021, I spoke with people at the Children's Advocacy Center with Officer Peggles. This was my first idea, but it didn't necessarily go through. July of 2021, I spoke with influencers about awareness and therapy for sexual assault. They helped me grow my audience a ton and using different things like hashtags and different videos to make and stuff like that. In July of 2021, I graduated from a junior police academy, and this had a lot to play in just the knowledge I gained that I could share with my capstone. November 2022, I took a step back from my capstone and I continued to grow my platforms and spread awareness. March 2023, I competed and I won the title as a 2023 Blossom Queen, and this has a lot to share in my capstone, mainly because that was the platform that I used, and it grew my social media tremendously. October of 2023, I met with the Zonta women and my mentor, and we went over different ways to help the community. So February of 2024, Zonta held an event called 1 Billion and Rising, and at that event we brainstormed different ideas, and we ended up going with the What Was I Wearing exhibit. This was an amazing way to help people gain perspective on how much this traumatic event really plays, even in our own community. In March of 2024, my Blossom reign comes to an end, and I plan to speak at the pageant about my capstone, and mainly that I used my Blossom platform also to go with my capstone and just make different things, then they kind of tie together. For my reading and writing, I researched other people's stories, and I read about a lot of different advocacy groups, like the Pregnancy Center, Advocacy Center, and the Advocacy Center, the Pregnancy Center, and different things like that. For my writing, I passed my capstone research paper and I wrote posts online, and each of them were about a paragraph to sometimes even like an essay long. Communication was a huge part of my capstone. Like I said, I had a lot of social media outreach, so as Blossom Queen, I was considered a public figure on Instagram, so I posted pictures, videos, stories, and songs. I had the Zonta women and my mentor to discuss options on how I could impact the community, and I shared my story, my project plan, and attended meetings. Lastly, my community events. I attended events in Canyon as well as outside town, and I represented as the queen and what I stood for. And then here's just a lot of different pictures. There's one with city council, and then a lot of different like agendas to the meetings, and then emails with my capstone mentor. So for math number 1, I chose make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. And I did that by trying to make my numbers on social media grow so I have a bigger audience. And as you can see in the top left or right for you guys, I started with 1,346 people making impressions on my posts. And throughout my capstone, when I grew my audience, I ended with about 10,000 people making impressions with my posts. So as you can see, I made a lot of growth within my capstone, and Blossom really helped with that. And I also persevered in trying to find a mentor. That was really difficult with the topic that I chose. Math number 2 was models with mathematics. Throughout the years, there's been a fluctuating number of cases reported and cases unreported, and I constantly ask myself why that is. And I chose 2 different graphs, and both of the sources are below, and they are national graphs. And the first one was why rape goes unreported, and 40% of people answered with embarrassment, and that made me kind of step back. And when I did share this with the public, it was kind of like an eye-opener thing with, society is kind of the reason. Math number 3, I chose attends to precision, which is math number 6 on your guys' papers, I believe. And this was mainly to kind of look back at my Capstone and realized that like all the facts that I shared, I wanted to, fact check them and make sure that everything I was sharing was, was real, and I did have a source to go behind everything I said. And on here, I kind of just have different facts that I shared, and they're all from the same source, which was a survey done by a news channel. So it was really important to me to make sure that everything I was sharing was reliable. So the traits and the skill that I chose was agency and empowerment, which is acting independently with purpose, courage, and power, and taking charge of circumstances. And I color-coded this to kind of make it more easier to see what I did, what I learned, and how I applied it. What I did was I held my ground, although people tried to keep me from speaking. This is a topic that is touchy, and it's a topic that no one wants to hear about, and we pretend it doesn't exist, but it's life-changing. And with my personal experience, I kind of took that, and no matter when I was silenced or when I was told to not talk, I did, and I made it to my goal. I'm here telling all of you guys. And I learned that although people are intimidated by this topic and intimidated by powerful words, and it may be uncomfortable, it's a conversation that needs to be had, and I can apply that for everything in my life. So conversations can be hard, but they need to be had for the greater good of society. So no matter what I say, like if somebody's trying to put me down, then the one person that it helps, and that's the reason why I'm doing it, and that's the greater good of society. Lessons learned. Personally, I got closure from this. Like I said, this was a mental battle the whole time I did this, but I got closure by helping others. And I help survivors feel supported and bring their confidence back, because that's exactly what you lose in this battle. And it really was challenging for me to overcome personal setbacks. Like I said, this was a mental battle the whole time, and it's something that it takes a lot of courage to talk about it. So that was a little setback for me. And I hope to continue to be an advocate online and speak on this topic for forever. This is something I want to bring into my future, and I can apply everything I learned through this project to my future and my future jobs. My call to action. This slide was particularly important to me because my whole capstone was basically, making different calls to action and trying to get people to understand me and hear me. So the first one, I'm sorry. My first call to action is end victim blaming. This one is super important to me, mainly because no matter what happens, it's never that person's fault. My second one is learn how to support survivors. They may say things on a daily basis that hits a little bit deeper than you think. I'm sorry. My final one is being a victim does not define that person in any way, shape, or form. So support them no matter what you're doing. And being a victim, you're more than that. So. And I just have some acknowledgments that I listed below, but I won't list the reason why. That could be something we go back to. I just wanted to thank you guys. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to come here and present my capstone again. I appreciate it. So if there's any questions, I'd be willing to answer any.
Who frequently express dissatisfaction with the lack of activities available to them. As a senior here at the high school and a member in our community, I constantly hear people complain about how there is nothing to do in Canyon.
Our driving question is how can we safely promote and encourage participation in river surfing within our community?
Hi, my name is Alyssa Richardson. I am in the STEAM pathway. I am a 3-sport athlete here at the high school, and I wanted to do this project to expand the river use in Canyon City.
I'm Levi Krantz. I'm also in the STEAM pathway. I'm a competitive hockey player, I'm a fly fisherman, and a glider pilot. And not only do I love surfing, but I also want to give other people the opportunity to share some of my interests in the community.
For our timeline, our process consisted of 5 stages, which you can see up on the screen. Our project ultimately fell into the stage 3 category, which was where we actually put on the river surfing event.
For our summary, we promoted river surfing within our community. We emphasized river safety. We engaged a broad spectrum of people, which was one of our goals, and we united one another, developing a trusting relationship with our students.
For knowledge and communication, we use professional communication through email, text, and social media, as you can see in the picture in the middle and on the left. We got the opportunity to work with Mike Harvey up in Salida. He's the Bad Fish owner up there. With him, we discussed the specifics of offering a discount or a coupon certificate for the people who attended our session. These images not only represent the successful outcome, but also the process of what professional communication looks like.
On the right side of the screen here is a flyer that we posted via social media on Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook. It showed the time and place, and then attached to it was a link that led you to this page, which is just a basic list of things that you should bring and be prepared for. And then this video is just of Allie and I surfing, just in case anyone didn't really know what to expect.
For Knowledge and Communication Math 1, which is Make Sense of Problems, we recognized a gap in outdoor recreation and the lack of awareness of what Canyon City actually has to offer to the community. Our project aimed at introducing the community to river surfing because it is an inclusive activity for a wide range of ages. We also, during the summer, observed kids and adults using the river in unsafe ways. And to address this, we wanted to focus on providing knowledge about safe river practices.
One of the biggest issues that we ran into with this project was when we were planning our initial date for our project, we were expecting the water levels to have already lowered for the season, but due to the high water runoff this season lasted longer than usual, we had to reschedule. So we posted this flyer on our social media platforms. That way it would grab people's attention, they wouldn't just scroll past it, and they could change our calendars for us. Another problem that came along with this is our mentor, Jimmy Whiteside, is the owner of Royal Gorge Rafting, so it was his prime season during high water levels, so it was difficult to find a date that worked for him as well. For math and communication, or knowledge and communication, Math 6, which is Attends to Precision, we previously called the city before our project date, that way we could have the pavilion next to the wave reserved.
As I previously talked about, we worked with Mike Harvey up in Salida, he's the Bad Fish owner, and we were able to get the coupons for our attendees, and that was a 10% off coupon for anything in-store and a 15% off coupon for all of his boards. We handed these out after the session to all of our students.
For knowledge and communication, Math 7, which is looks for and makes use of structure, we planned a precise schedule for the day. This allowed us to share it with all of our helpers, that way we were all on the same page.
Up on the screen is what the schedule actually looked like. It was just a brief breakdown of how we wanted the day to go, with times and what we wanted to be doing at that time, and where we needed volunteers.
Moving on to innovation and solution seeking, we supported our community by providing food and water to all of our participants, and then we also provided all the necessary safety gear and river surfing gear like boards, quick release leashes, helmets, and life vests.
One of our goals was to create equality for all community members to experience river surfing. We acknowledged the barriers created by the high costs of river equipment, which is a factor for many individuals in our community. One of our most rewarding moments is when we met these two gentlemen, which you see up on the screen. They come from a low economic background, and it was incredibly fulfilling to see their excitement and their joy getting to learn how to river surf just like their peers. 2 weeks later, at the Whitewater Festival, they attended the surfing competition, and they ended up winning a board, which was really cool that Bad Fish provided for them. This experience underscored the importance of our project's mission, which is to promote equality and access to outdoor recreation. We continue to see these boys around town and at the river, and we constantly get thank yous for providing them this opportunity.
We learned to ensure equal opportunity among community members, and this project taught us that creating these opportunities isn't just about the surfing, but it's about bringing understanding of joy into someone's life and the difference that us as individuals can make. Our application was a large variety and such a big group attended our classes, and I feel like this made our project stronger as a whole.
For the reflection and the lessons learned, one of the things we learned was the importance of organization. Putting on an event like this that involves the community and the river, we realized the importance of having a precise plan in place and a schedule pre-planned so that the day could run smoothly.
We learned that having attention-grabbing advertisements and clearly stating all of our what we wanted the advertisements to say is so important. And that way, like when we did have to do the date change, people didn't just scroll past it and they were actually able to change their calendar. Another thing that this taught, or that looking back on it, we wish we would have done a little bit differently, was on our initial flyer it said, come be in between 11 and 3, and we meant that you should show up at 11 and 3 and be there till 3 o'clock, but they interpreted this as come any time in between those two times, so that made us have to change our day plan a little bit.
Another lesson we learned was the importance of factoring in all possible elements of the event, and so talking about the water levels, we didn't take that into consideration as much as we should have, and so we learned that we need to consider all things before putting on an event like this.
The last big thing that we really learned from this and got better at was managing such a big, diverse group. There was all different ages and skill levels there, and so at first we didn't know how to tender to everyone's needs, but by the end of it, we worked with everyone individually and kind of had the whole group working in unison. For our call to action, we want to continue to expand the river community. We are so lucky and blessed to have the river in our backyard. And so whatever we can do to get people on the river is something that we'd like to do. So if you're in the market for any surfing gear or river gear, we highly recommend Badfish. They're great to work with, and we love their products.
Another cool thing that we offered at our session was we posted up QR codes, which you can see up on the screen. The QR codes led to a PDF that we created. Within that PDF, we had a list of links of where they could get their equipment from. At the bottom, we also had a link to sign up for the Whitewater Festival, which took place 2 weeks after our session, and we actually saw a lot of our students come to the festival. We also wanted to just give a few thanks. Jimmy Whiteside was our mentor. He did a great job. Tim Krantz, Shai Krantz, Amy Richardson, Mandy Kiken, Cheryl and Martin Kiken. Everyone was just tremendous. They have provided such tremendous support, whether that was providing food for the kids, helping take photos, or even being just our safety guys.
Thank you everyone for your time and consideration, and does anyone have any questions?
Michaela, when you start talking, I'll start timing.
How many of you guys would love to have $300 in your pocket right now? What if I told you that that $300 came from a preschool, a group of preschool students? What if I told you that that $300 was raised in the work of less than 1 week by them? Would you believe it then? The question I tried to answer for my capstone was, how can children use art to benefit themselves as well as their community? I tried to find a way for children to find a way to impact themselves and give back to their community and benefit not only themselves but also give back to the people around them. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michaela Tamlin. I'm a senior here at the high school, and throughout the 4 years I've been a part of Link Crew, National Honor Society, and Student Council. I'm part of the Health Pathway and currently working towards graduating with my CNA license, and I plan to, after high school, go into nursing school and to go into neonatal intensive care unit or labor and delivery. My mentor for this project was Melissa McBroom. She graduated from Oklahoma State University and is now a preschool teacher at McKinley Elementary, and she recently got promoted to assistant preschool director. So for my capstone, I combined it with my internship at McKinley Elementary, and what I did was I took their preschool program and I met with each of their 5 classes that they had, and I wanted to find a way to do an art project with all of them. So what we did was we found an artist and paired it with each of the classes that we thought best kind of represented that class and kind of was a good pairing with all of them. So we got a book that kind of taught them about the artist and kind of taught them what they did, why they did the kind of art they did, and we took those art pieces that the kids made and we auctioned them off to the community and raised money that we could later donate back to the school. So here are some general dates of what I did. I started my internship in about the beginning of March, and throughout March and kind of throughout that month, I was working on setting up the art projects, buying the materials that we needed, and just kind of doing a bunch of like the background research and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with this. And then at the first week of April is when I started all of the art projects. So again, here's some of the specific dates of what I did. We finished all the art projects within that first week of April, and then I did I wanted to kind of open the community up to seeing what the projects were and kind of get the word out about what we were doing. So I presented at McKinley's open house and several other kind of displays and other things throughout the community to kind of get the word out about what we were doing. And then April 15th is when I opened the auction, and we closed it 1 month later on May 15th. And then November 9th is when I went back and donated all the materials back to the school. So even though this was an art project, there definitely was a lot of reading and writing involved. Like I said before, we did book studies with each of the classes where we got the books and we kind of taught each class about the artist so they understood why we were doing what we were doing and not just giving them a project and telling them, here you go, you can do it. We kind of helped them to understand what we were doing and the point behind it. I also did an informational poster that we had set up at different displays, and what that was just kind of a summary of what each class was doing and again why we were doing it and kind of the whole point behind it. And then I also had the pre-search paper that I wrote about kind of the mental health aspect of it and how art can really channel kids' emotions and kind of they can have a way to express themselves into what they're trying to do. And then I had the mentor letter that I wrote to the preschool director herself and kind of letting her know what I wanted to do and kind of seeing what I could carry out with this. And that picture there is a social media post that we had. We had McKinley post it out to their social media platforms to kind of help spread the word to like the kids' parents and just throughout the whole community about what we were doing. And here's that informational poster I mentioned. We have each of the little white boxes is what each class did and kind of a summary of what they were doing and kind of explain the projects more in depth. And then we have pictures of them throughout like their projects and just kind of them during the whole process. And on the left here I have the pre-search paper that I wrote back my sophomore year that I submitted to the preschool so that they kind of understood what I was doing. And then on the right I have the mentor letter that I wrote to the preschool director. For communication, there was a lot of that involved as well. Like I said, I presented at McKinley's open house, and that definitely had a lot of communication because I had to coordinate it with the preschool and with my school to kind of work around my schedule and theirs, and kind of just talking to different community members. I presented to some of the school board members here at the high school as well, and I had several meetings with, again, all the different teachers of the preschool and the high school here. Since I was doing it with my internship, I had to work around that and try and find times that I could go in with them. And there was a lot of coordinating plans that had to happen, again, since all of our schedules were super busy. And towards the end, when I was ready to finally present this capstone, I had an email sent out to all my evaluators, kind of coordinating a time that worked for all of us, since, again, we were between the high school and preschool in a bunch of different places. Here's a display that I had at their open house where all the school board members and different community members came into. And then here's another one I had. This was at their McKinley's movie night that they had where all the parents could come in with their kids and watch movies and stuff. So we thought that was a good chance to really get parents involved more so than the school board members for this one and kind of open it up more to the kids who actually did the projects. And here's a close-up of the black and white ones we did with one of our older classes, and there's the bid sheets that we had set up for the auction as well. And again, even though it was an art project, there was a lot of math involved too. The first math trait I had was making sense of problems and persevering in solving them. A common problem I found was trying to maintain a budget. So we didn't want to spend a bunch of money on materials and then not really gain a profit from once we sold the projects. So that was definitely, we wanted to keep the money that we spent on supplies lower so that we had a bigger profit in the end. So there's the receipt then of all the supplies that we bought before we started the projects. The second math slide I had was Model with Mathematics, which involves a lot of organizing data, which I thought was perfect for my project because we had bid sheets and different budgeting plans and had to kind of keep track of a bunch of different like spending since we had a bunch of different transactions with it. So it definitely had a lot of organizing that needed to come with that. And to make it relevant, we kind of took it as we made budgets for things, which kind of goes into making weekly budgets, like, you know, with groceries, like kind of stuff like that, like in everyday life, it's very relevant. You can kind of use it in your life these days. And then here's the bid sheets that we had once they were sold and our final totals on those. And my third math slide was making use of structure, and that involves solving complex problems. And one of the big problems we had was we had that $300 total, but what more so I wasn't taking into consideration was that the materials we were buying did have tax on them, and some of the materials we got were sale items as well, so it definitely kind of changed the pricing around and made it a little more complicated than I had originally thought. And we also had unpredicted bids, so we would, when we thought we were done with the bidding, we had parents who, once they won, kind of, like once the auction was closed, we had parents that once they won that art project, they were willing to donate even more, once, like they donated more than their original amount that they had bid on originally. And the way I kind of went about solving this was we kind of broke down the problem, and we did, instead of spending all $300 at once, we kind of split it into separate little transactions and grouped it by the kind of materials we were buying so that I could better keep track of what we were buying. And since all the classes were different age groups, it was harder to kind of, not all the classes would use the same kind of art material, so it was definitely better to group it into smaller chunks and do it that way. And then here's all the receipts from the different transactions that we had. And my strongest trait I felt like was shown in this was agility and contribution. And one of the biggest things I came across when doing this project is that I was trying to teach a group of kids who were a lot younger than me and were kind of not necessarily the same level as I was, but I didn't understand how to teach them in a way that they could understand it. So I had to kind of self-reflect a lot on that and go back and kind of fix what I was doing and kind of think about it more in a way of how I can better help them by changing what I'm doing. And what I learned from that was definitely how to reflect on myself and how to kind of set strategies to help myself with that. And here was one of those things that we did. We had this project that I thought was a little too hard for that class, so we kind of broke it down and did sort of like a color by number to help them, and there was the finished product with that. And a lot of lessons I learned again was self-reflection and just kind of learning patience and flexibility and learning how to kind of take my own time and kind of learn how to do that sort of thing. And my call to action was, while we try to teach our children about life, our children teach us what life is all about. That quote's by Angela Schwinn. And I think that's just kind of, we need to kind of take a step back and realize that kids don't necessarily think about things the same way we do, and we kind of need each other to balance out the world and figure out what we want from that. And then here are all of our donations. And then my products. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Madison Williams, and my capstone project was on how to change lives. When most of us think of our caregivers in our younger years, we often feel safety and comfort. However, that is not the case for everyone, especially those who have spent time in foster care. The question that drove my capstone project was, how can I make a positive impact on children placed in our foster care? Before I get into their story, I would like to share a little of mine. My name is Madison Williams. I am in the health pathway. I have been dancing since I was 6 years old, and I have great aspirations of being a registered nurse. I have already taken many classes, including my CNA, in hopes of achieving this goal. My professional consultant was Lisa Hitchner. She was a senior caseworker for DHS, a behavioral therapist in New Jersey, and our caseworker for most of our foster placements. What started us as a foster home was actually the separation of my own family. In October of 2020, my cousins AJ, 4 at the time, and Serenity, 2, were placed in our care. We had them for the span of 2 years, and in that 2 years we became foster certified and many other achievements as well. When they left, it left a huge hole in our hearts, so one fateful day in December when we got a call that there was a baby girl that needed a home, we jumped at the opportunity. She later stayed in our home for almost 2 months, and she was then adopted by a kindergarten teacher and his wife. In April of last year, we got a placement of our wonderful Kinley, and she has been with us ever since, and we never want to let her go. We have hopes of adopting her. The summary of my capstone was to make a difference in foster placements' lives, to be the person they can look back on and smile. My mom and I have been fostering since 2020 and have had 4 amazing placements that have either been reunified or adopted. For knowledge and communication, the reading and writing aspect of this would be our foster certification, which my mom had to become foster certified, and I plan to follow since I'm now 18. We are both CPR certified, which is a requirement of DHS. We must do continuing education courses through DHS, keeping up with our foster certification. In my opinion, you have not mastered a skill until you can teach it, and being able to help kindergartners, first graders, school-age children with their homework, with their reading and writing is very important to me, so I feel that is a very important part of the reading and writing as well. With the communication aspect, extensive interviews have to happen for everyone in the home. Interviews that consist of questions on my GPA, my attendance, my plans for my future, and what I do in my free time. I also had to complete a background check and are expected to pass those throughout our foster journey. Home visits are also a very important part of foster care. There is one scheduled every month, but that does not mean that they cannot come unannounced and just stop into the home. Visitation with biological parents is very, very crucial in having a healthy relationship with your foster child. If they see you fighting with their mom, they're probably not going to like you all that much. Doctor appointments are also very important because often these children are coming to us sick or malnourished, so being able to keep up with that is also very important. My first principle is Math Principle 1, make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. All children are different and need specialized care when they arrive. It is very important to work through tough problems until they are solved with these children. For example, when my younger cousins, AJ and Serenity, first came to live with us, they didn't have much rules of any kind. So we really had to make sure that those rules were instilled in them and that we still had those expectations that they knew, and if they didn't live up to them, there would be some repercussions. Eventually, they did catch on, and they were very easy to deal with after we got past that first hurdle. With little Kinley here, when she first arrived, she unfortunately was going through withdrawal. With her, that looked like she wasn't sleeping, she had trouble eating, and she was very, very colicky. Once we got past the withdrawal, once we helped her through that, we realized that her formula wasn't really fitting her. She was having a lot of trouble digesting it. So we had to try multiple formulas for her to digest better. And luckily we found one that works good for her. My second choice was Math Principle 6, attends to precision. My mom and I are the medically fragile placement for our county. Thus, we often get infants straight from the neonatal intensive care unit, or the NICU. They often are on oxygen and need medication. On page 3, you have Ellie. Ellie had many medical issues resulting from her being a micro-preemie. She was born at 24 weeks and weighed 1 pound 3 ounces. Because of this, she had a hole in her heart and not completely developed lungs. She was on medication 3 times a day to help these, so it was very important for us to plan out those times that she could get her medicine, and it would be in the perfect time zone for it. My final choice was Math Principle 7, looks for and makes sure of structure. Children of all ages greatly benefit from schedules. Kids will recognize patterns after time, and they will start to pick up on them. As I previously said, AJ and Serenity really didn't have a schedule when they came to us. They had to learn how to go to sleep at a decent time. They had to learn that there are 3 main meal times in a day. We don't just snack all day. Daycare and school also really helped with this because it really instilled that routine in them that we get up, we go to school, and then we come home, and obviously homework and dinner and things like that. With Kinley this summer, we loved going for morning walks, and if she did not go for her morning walk in the morning, she became rather difficult to deal with. I believe that was because she was confused that if something else didn't happen in the day, what else might not happen. For my traits and skills, I chose tenacity. Tenacity is one of the main attributes needed in foster care. I demonstrate tenacity for the children by overcoming the unique challenges presented by them with patience and grace. Here's a very unique challenge for you. When we first got Ellie, she had no idea how to cry. All she knew was comfort and being content in her life because she had only spent all of her life in the NICU. So we had to teach her how to cry and how to show that she needed things, which was very heartbreaking at times, but after a while, she did learn how and it was easier to deal with. Another difficult challenge with her is she didn't know how to love and she didn't know how to accept love. So we just snuggled up with her. It was definitely not difficult to overcome that one because we held her as much as we could, and she definitely became a cuddle bug. Reflection. Some things work with certain kids and some do not. Reflect on what works and what doesn't and learn from it. Reflection is key in becoming a better foster parent. Learning what works with previous placements is very beneficial to help with current placements. Reflecting on yourself at the end, and that's why we do what we do, that laugh right there. Reflecting on yourself at the end of the day is also very important because you can always learn from anything. Learning is always happening. So if maybe you didn't handle your temper that well that day, you tell yourself, hey, this happened, let's change it tomorrow. And in my personal experience and the experience of most of my fosters, ice cream is almost always a very helpful solution. My lessons learned. Your words have meaning. Your words define you. Always think before you speak. Be willing to give. Do not force children to do things, but leave opportunities open. Always show love. No matter what you do or how you do it, make sure you show your love. Nutrition. Kids are picky eaters. It is no secret. But find a happy medium where they are nourished and content. Tone. How loud your voice is can turn the nicest words into daggers. Gratification. No matter how small the task may be, show how proud you are of that child. My call to action is if you have ever thought of being a foster parent, do it. You will change lives every day. A quote that comes to mind that perfectly sums up foster care is one of Maya Angelou's. It goes like this. They may forget what you said, and they may forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. That's what I love most about foster care. One day they will look back on the tragedy in their lives and know that someone loved them. And that's how I know that I will change a life. But in reality, the life that was changed the most was my own. Thank you.
83% improvement. This is how much one fifth grader was able to improve in a unit of multiplication in just a few weeks because she got access to one-on-one tutoring. One-on-one tutoring. My name is Sarah Garudo, and this is my Capstone project. My driving question was, how can I help younger elementary students who need access to private tutoring in my community? For my introduction, I'm in the education pathway here at CCHS. For my interests, I'm a dancer, and I really like teaching dance to younger students. Here at the high school, I'm in NHS, Student Council, and Link Crew. I want to go to college and become a teacher for younger kids, like first and third graders. So the summary of this capstone was that I tutored a girl one-on-one in multiplication in order to improve her math skills. I chose this capstone because there's just so many children who need a little extra help but don't qualify for that special education. The goal of this capstone was for her to be able to achieve a good grade on a test, which was something she had been struggling with. And for the background information, I took the Teachers Cadet program here, so I was kind of learning as I went along, like the correct way to tutor and teach someone. For the timeline of this, on November 6th, my mentor, Miss Milan, and I deliberated on a student to tutor and then created a permission slip. So we sent this permission slip, which I created, to the parents, and she got back really fast, and the next day I was able to give her her pre-test, which she got 0% on. For the 8th through 15th, I tutored her on how to multiply 2 by 3-digit multiplication numbers. For November and December, I worked with her on various worksheets that showed me what she was struggling with and helped me improve her math skills. And then finally, on December 6th, she took her post-test, improving by 83%. So as you can see up here, this is her pre-test and post-test. I graded them myself. They're the exact same test, and she got 0% the first time, and then 10 out of 12 by the end of it. For knowledge and communication, my reading and writing, how I fulfilled this was taking daily notes of what I did each day, all the assignments, everything we went over, and then of course my pre-search paper and the permission letter, and I have links to all of those right here. And then for communication, I communicated with the student to see how she learned best, and I'd ask her questions every time, like, was this helpful? And then she'd tell me. And then just teaching the material itself. And I also had a lot of discussions with my professional consultant and meetings about what I could do better and improve to help her. So this is my evidence for that. This is an email asking my professional consultant if I could come down and do this capstone. And then this is me communicating with the whole class, because in this capstone I also did get to know other kids just besides the girl I tutored. So for my first math principle, I chose constructs viable arguments and critiques the reasoning of others. So I created a graph for the post-test so you could see the difference. So the much longer pink line is the child that I tutored, and as you can see, it shows that she got 10 out of 12 on her post-test. Then I took all of the students who also scored 0% on their pre-test, and I averaged together all of their post-test grades, and they only got 2.88 out of 12, or 17%, without access to one-on-one tutoring. For my second math skill, I chose make sense of all types of problems to persevere in solving them. So finding the right student to tutor was a challenge because we were going to choose this one, but then she ended up doing amazing, so we had to find a whole new one. And then multiplying by 9 was a tricky one. That was the hardest one I found to teach her, so I came up and found this 9s trick, which really helped her and was kind of the biggest hurdle we faced in the actual teaching. And then just reaching the intended goal in time was important because you have to move on in math. And my third one was looks for and expresses regularity and repeated reasoning. So I was learning how to teach multiplication since I've never actually taught a whole unit of math to someone before. And so that was a repetitive process of seeing what worked best. Having flexibility with setbacks, because no matter what, there's always going to be some setbacks when you're teaching someone, and you just have to have flexibility and say, what can I do better? And then just planning ahead, like as you can see up here, this Ritz cracker and M&M assignment was a fun one just to practice some simple multiplication. That really helped her, got her in the right headspace for like a fun little warm-up. So the trait that I chose was tenacity and reflection. So what I learned from this is that you have to be patient. As you can see here, this assignment, which is my evidence, this is a lot of work for a 5th grader, and this is like a whole day's assignment for her, which I also graded all her assignments myself, and it was really important to see her growth throughout it. And this was also a way for me to see what I wasn't doing well, or like what I could improve on myself. So as you can see with the markers, she was having a really hard time deciphering everything in pencil because it just all looked like one big mess. So I came up with this markers trick to where you could color it different markers and do your work in marker, and that really helped her differentiate what she was doing and which problem. How to engage the student in learning, like the Ritz cracker and M&M idea, that was one because she's a child, she's gonna get distracted, so it's just fun activities that help her and you. And how to tell what a child is struggling with, I kind of said through all these assignments, I saw what she was struggling with and what she needed help on, and what I was struggling teaching. And then how to reflect on the assignment and see what I could do better. So my application of how I could bring this into the world is reflecting on my own work, which is something really important, which I learned from this capstone, because if she failed, then I know I failed in a way, so it was real trial and error. And then continuing just to put in the work in the future, I found was also really important. because all the things I did, coming prepared, all of that, it really helped me and her. And when I knew what I was doing, she knew what she was doing. So my lessons learned from this project is that tutoring a child is such an important responsibility, which I don't think I really thought it would be at the beginning. But I was so fortunate because the child I tutored really wanted to learn, and that was such an amazing thing for me, because when she wanted to learn and get better and get that good grade, it just made it so much easier for her to take in the material. And doing this project has shown me that teaching is a way to help someone, a child in this case, but anyone, and that's what I really loved about it. This answered my driving question because I was able to help a child in my community through tutoring. I learned about teaching and how to apply it to a child who was in need. As I said at the beginning, there's so many children in the classroom who need a little extra help but just don't receive it. And then the biggest challenge I faced was trying to find a child. As I stated, we found one, but then she surprised us and ended up doing super well on the pre-test. So we had to scramble and find a new one just in the nick of time. And then this connects to my future aspirations, because I think I want to go into teaching one day, and this was like a good trial of how it would be. So for my call to action, I encourage anyone who's a teacher to find a child in their classroom that may need extra help and find a way to provide it to them. It doesn't necessarily need to be one-on-one tutoring, but it can be, and that's what's amazing about it. I was just so happy that I was able to help just even one person succeed, and succeed that much on her post-test. So if you can just find one person that needs that little extra help and find a way to provide it, it really does make all the difference. That's my table of contents. That's it.
All right, well, my name is Reagan Deist. I just want to say thank you all for being here today, and I greatly appreciate it. I'm presenting Eternum, Passion for a Cause. So Eternum is actually the Latin translation of the word forever or eternal. Eternum was a fashion show as well as a silent auction to raise funds for the 988 hotline, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. A few key goals throughout this project were to raise awareness around mental health in our community, as well as raise funds for the National 988 hotline, and highlight some of the awesome talent that we have here in Fremont County. My central question for this was, how can I use art with my community to raise awareness around mental health? A little bit about me. My name is Reagan Deist. I'm a junior here at Canyon City High School. I am president of our local FBLA chapter, and I'm graduating early this year. My future plans are to go into business law and management. I love entrepreneurship, and I hope to continue that my whole life, and one day hopefully own my own clothing line. The big why for this project, obviously there had to be some inspiration behind it, and for me it was my awesome mom. My mom was an artist, a photographer, a local business owner here. If you ever had Boat Barn Bagel Company, that was all her, best bagels in town. Unfortunately, we closed down in 2020 because we lost her to suicide. This was not only a devastation to me, but a huge loss in our community, and I really wanted to find a way to honor her creativity and just for our community to enjoy. My consultants throughout this project, I actually had two lovely ladies that I got to work with, Aspen Mayhew and Christy Slogenhop. Aspen Mayhew is a local model, artist, director, and photographer. That lady does it all. She helped me a lot with just behind the scenes work and putting this show together. She has a lot of experience in fashion, and I'm very new to it, so she was just a great help throughout all of this. She also ran my back of house that night, so that includes just getting my models ready, queuing them on time, making sure they're all following schedule, and just kind of dealing with back of house so I didn't have to be out there. My second consultant was Christy Slogenhop, who is a nonprofit coordinator here in Canyon City. She's the head of the Salvation Army unit here, and she also works at Hope House. She helped, again, with a lot of just behind-the-scenes stuff, the logistics of the show. She introduced me to my biggest sponsor throughout this, Unbridled Acts, and she was honestly just there a lot for advice and support. There were definitely a few nights that I called her just saying, I don't know what I'm doing, I need help, and she was always there to help me figure it out. My passage summary, it's really hard to put this event in such little words. This was planned and executed over a 9-month period.
So putting it into a few bullet points definitely doesn't do it justice, but it started where everything does, with just brainstorming. I was trying to find a theme for my show, the name, even just a venue, just the little details. My first finalizations were when I secured a venue. After that, I could kind of confirm with my designers, find models, find vendors for the silent auction, and then actually start like marketing it and getting people to hopefully show up. And then obviously the actual execution of the event, which was on October 28th. My timeline for this, like I said, this was a very long project. It started back in March of 23 and was not finalized until November of 23. The show was on October 28th of 2023, and then down below are just some important dates that I felt were important throughout this show, like getting the name, finding my first sponsor, just stuff that really stood out to me and made this show kind of move along. The results of this show definitely blew me out the water. I remember texting one of my friends and just saying that I'm going to be happy if 20 people show up. I had 106 people in attendance that night. It was the weekend of Halloween, and the weather kind of put a damper on that, but I still had so much love and support from the community show up. I had 4 local designers and artists highlighted throughout this show. We had 15 models, all here from Fremont County, as well as a local music artist here from Fremont County who just started producing his own sounds. I had 2 guest speakers and 11 vendors participate in my silent auction. Through that silent auction, we auctioned off 23 items. And at the end of the night, we got the full tally, and we raised $3,698 that we then donated to the 988 hotline. This is just a list of some of the vendors who participated in the silent auction. Without these people, we wouldn't have been able to do the silent auction, and that was a huge draw. It was a huge part of what we got to donate. Not only did these people donate products, but they donated their time and energy and came to support at the show, and it was awesome to be able to highlight such awesome people from our community. For my knowledge and my communication, I swear I talked so much and wrote more emails than I ever have in my life in this like 6-month period. I had a passage proposal written and just digital communication with everyone that I was working with. My passage slideshow, reflection. I'm currently building out a website for this show. I had just recently spoken with my main sponsor, and they want to continue doing it. They were also the ones who donated me the venue, so this will be happening yearly now. So we're kind of trying to build everything out, as well as flyers and sponsorship emails. And when it came to communication, again, I was talking so much. I feel like I needed like a solid week to not speak after this show. I was meeting with people every single day. My teachers can attest for it, the amount of times I was flexing from class to go have meetings with sponsors or models or artists or people at my venue. There was just so much. As well as hosting the show and networking with people there, I also spoke at the show, and I presented this project to Tiger Open Pathway as well. My first math trait was make sense of problems to persevere in solving them. Obviously with this show, this was my first time doing an event this large, but also my first fashion show. So there are definitely going to be some bumps in the road. A few of those that kind of stood out the most were a lack of funding. I had a designer drop on me a month before my show, and in general, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just figuring this out. Half the time I was Googling and like watching YouTube videos about how to throw a fashion show. It didn't help too much. But throughout doing this, I really learned how to think on my feet and create effective solutions to problems before it kind of put a damper in the show. When we didn't have the money, I put a lot of my own personal funds into this show, as well as finding sponsors and people from the community who wanted to see the show happen. I had backup plans for basically everything. When my designer dropped a month before my show, I couldn't find another designer to fill in, so I designed my first clothing line with a month out from my show, and was able to enter that in my show, which was it was super awesome, very stressful, but definitely taught me a lot. And I found a lot of people who knew the things that I didn't, and when I needed help, I had a lovely community of people there to support me and assist me throughout this process and make sure that the show went as effectively as it could. My second one was attends to with precision. I did this with creating schedules and timelines and following them appropriately. Not only did I have a timeline for this show, but also the night of the event, we had to make sure everything was going by the second. Especially when it comes to models walking and stuff like that. If everything's not flowing properly, the guests can see and it just kind of gets uncomfortable. As well as precision while creating clothes. I was designing clothes for specific people. This designer had already had models and they were already participating, so I wasn't just designing a line, I was designing a line for 4 specific people and had to make it a very precise thing, not only just to fit them, but also fit the theme and the aesthetic. And my third math trait is looks for and use mix of structure. I again practiced this when scheduling and making sure that everything was appropriate. In a large scale event, it's really important that you're making everything as comfortable and flow well to your guests. If something were to bump up in our schedule, it's definitely very apparent to the guests and it just doesn't look as professional. The schedule is linked in this slideshow, but it goes minute by minute through everything that was going on. Especially when you have models walking and stuff. If one person is off by 10 seconds, it throws the next walk off by 30. So just really making sure that everything was flowing properly, guests were comfortable. The trait and skill I feel as though I practiced most throughout this was innovation as well as solution seeking. I created and developed this fashion show, obviously with the support of my community, but I promise the idea did come from my brain. As well as creating custom clothing for 4 different people that already fit a pre-existing line description, and creating a new annual event for Fremont County. I practiced a lot of solution seeking, as we talked about before. I learned a lot how to just think on my feet and solve these problems quickly and efficiently, and make sure that a small problem wasn't going to be the reason my show couldn't go on. I learned a lot throughout the show, but I think the things that stood out to me the most were I have a new knowledge of people who plan events, because that was stressful. As much as I love it and I love everything I do, I definitely learned a lot about what to do this year, starting earlier and just making sure that everything is to the T, having backup plans and just really executing it well. As well as I stepped out of my comfort zone a lot with this event, even with this presentation. I'm not the most out there person, so doing all of this really put me in a spotlight, and I'm really proud of all the things that I learned throughout all of this. My call to action to you all starts with a quote, and it is, "The weird thing about devastating loss is that life actually goes on. When you are faced with a tragedy, a loss so huge you have no idea how you can live through it, somehow the world keeps turning and the seconds keep ticking." I think this quote encompasses this project really well. Obviously, losing a parent or losing anyone in life is a very hard thing for people to deal with. And so I feel like this project just really shows you that you can do a lot productively and positively with your energy instead of letting it overtake you. And again, thank you to everyone in the community, all these businesses, all of the humans, everyone who showed up or just shared the flyer on social media. This event definitely wouldn't have happened without the community, so I'm very grateful for that. And thank you guys for your time. I would love to answer any questions you have.